I'm being joined now by Chris Eden Green, who's from the UK, and he has a YouTube channel and he does a lot of really good work. A viewer of mine made me aware of your Steam Loco in Profile series, and
Hmm.
I went over to watch some of these videos and was really impressed with the quality. And I guess you're trying to raise funds to come over to the United States to do some of these Steam Loco and Profile videos of some of the equipment here. And so I thought, why not have you on and maybe we can help you raise some funds so you can make the projects happen. I think it's a cool idea. And if you can make the same kind of videos here that you're doing over there in the UK, I think great. That would be awesome. I'm excited about it.
Well, thank you. It's really kind of you to say that you were impressed by the quality. I never thought they were that good, to be perfectly honest with you. But if other people like them, then it's reassuring that that people do like them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm trying not to underestimate someone who listens to Tom Petty going by what your shirt says. So, you know,
Represent.
right.
God bless you, Tom.
I'm interested in finding out, I have a few questions for you. Obviously, this is how this works. And I'm kind of interested in finding out about you, who are you? Like, why are you doing this? What made you decide to go out and do all, because I know how much work it takes to make the kind of videos that you make. And I know it's not any small undertaking. What made you decide to do these videos?
Well, I've been interested in steam engines all my life. And when I was much younger, I used to watch a lot of direct-to-video documentaries that were made about steam locomotives. There was a really good direct-to-video series called Express Steam, which was produced by a firm called Castle Video in the early 90s. And they essentially looked at express passenger steam locomotives built in the United Kingdom from all of the big four companies and British Railways. And it sort of grew from there. There was Thomas the Tank Engine as well, although he wasn't the prime thing that got me into steam engines, but he did help in a manner of speaking. And then as I got older, I sort of kept interested in steam throughout my life. And when I left school, I knew that I wanted to do something to do with steam locos, but I wasn't quite sure what. And I thought, oh, maybe I want to work on them for a living. So I took an apprenticeship in mechanical engineering and did that for a number of years. But as I sort of entered my early 20s, I found that I was more sort of intrigued by the history and development of the steam locomotive rather than actually physically working on them. And I sort of began rewatching a lot of the programs that I used to watch as a child and thought, well, the information's there and the presentation is fine, but it was starting to look a little bit dated. The commentary on some of them, naming no names, was feeling a little bit monotonous and not particularly engaging. And I just thought, well, now that YouTube is starting to come into its own, this was 2008, 2009 for the record, I thought, well, I've got the tools to make a show like this myself. Why don't I have a go at it? Because I dabbled a little bit in filmmaking in my free time and found myself enjoying it. So one night in 2009, I decided, right, I'm going to have a go at this. And years later, after gathering enough footage, I had enough to make a couple of episodes and just launched this show. And I launched it in January 2012, and I've hardly looked back since, really.
I like that you had a pathway almost through the back channel of working on the stuff first. And then I think that gives you a better understanding of what you're showing, doesn't it?
It does. Although, truth be told, my experience of actually working on locomotives is, well, let's say it's not particularly vast. I did a few years volunteering on the Bluebell Railway in Sussex in their junior group, and then a few odd weekends working in their loco department in their workshop. And I did a little bit of the same on the Kent and East Sussex, and I've sort of dabbled here and there since then. But there are more experienced people out there in railway circles than me. So I'll hold my hands up and say that I'm not that good at it. But, just because you're not particularly good at something mechanically doesn't mean that you can't at least take an interest in in finding out how it all works and showing other people how, passing that enthusiasm on to other generations.
I'd like to first mention to people that you can see these videos, Steam Locos in profile, or SLIP as an acronym, on Chris's YouTube channel, and they're very much worth looking at. I just wonder, if you wouldn't mind explaining to people what you're trying to do, like if we met in an elevator and we're just going to the 10th floor and you have 2 minutes to tell me what Steam Locos in profile is and what it's about and such, what would you tell me?
Well, essentially, Steam Locos in Profile, or SLIPS as a lot of people call it for an acronym, is essentially a short series of documentary reviews about steam locomotives, which I tend to review class by class. So in 15 to 20 minutes or so, I take you through the concept and history of the particular steam loco class, why it came about, how it came about, any interesting aspects about him, any strengths, any weaknesses, and then how they went through the decline stage in the dying days of steam, as people call it, and what usually they tend to refer to in the late 50s and 60s, and their revival in preservation today. And a lot of fans have sort of likened it. This isn't my likening, but a lot of fans have likened it to like Top Gear, but classic Top Gear, but for steam locos, and without the three middle-aged men falling over, catching fire, and insulting the Mexicans every week. So,
yeah, no,
I will say that a huge chunk of Top Gear did act as a sort of catalyst for producing the show. I thought, if only rail enthusiasts had a show like that for them, because television refuses to make a show like that. So, why can't enthusiasts make it themselves?
So I am curious to get your reaction to the idea, and I don't know how much you know about steam in the US compared to steam in the UK, but my perception is that the people in your country take the history and the place in history and their heritage of steam trains, especially, a lot more seriously, and they hold it in more reverence, I think, than we do here in the States. Do you ever comment about that?
Well, I mean, we do take steam preservation very seriously in the UK. It is something that's very dear to our hearts, in a manner of speaking, because while we do like to sort of go forward as a nation, we equally like to hold on to things of the past. The future's scary for many people, and nostalgia is kind of important because it helps you realize where you came from, and it's familiar to people. I can't speak for people in the United States what the steam scene's like over there, but from my experience, a lot of people in the UK tend to hold a fairly sort of unkind view on steam in the US. They look at a US locomotive compared to a UK one and think, oh, that looks ugly. Oh, that's got all the pipes outside. Oh, it's not in a pretty color, not in a pretty livery, sort of thing. And okay, if you did say line up a Gresley A4 next to, I don't know, a big boy, then yeah, they're two very different machines, but people are probably going to say one is much prettier than the other, or one is more powerful than the other. But I think just because something may not look as beautiful in some people's eyes as some other people might think, that doesn't mean there's nothing to talk about. There's always discourse, whether it's good discourse or bad discourse, about any type of engine. And I think it would be nice to at least try and explore some more of that discourse beyond, this is a steam engine, this is where it was built, this is what it used to do, this is where it lives now. Look at it, sort of thing.
How many Steam Loco in profile episodes are there currently?
I've currently made about 40 full-blown episodes. Not all of them have gone out on YouTube. Some of them I've made as exclusives on DVD releases. I tend to release a volume of each year's supply of episodes. And on each of those volumes, I tend to have one or two bonus films, usually about narrow gauge or overseas types. So in 2014, we made a special on some narrow gauge locomotives in the Republic of Ireland. In 2015, we made one about the Vale of Rydal 262 tank engines, which were 2-foot gauge locos, but looking at them, you wouldn't think they were 2-foot gauge because they're something like 8 feet wide. In 2017, we did a pair of specials out in Germany as to celebrate the 5th anniversary of steam locos in profile. They were about the Kriegslok 210Os and the meter gauge Harz Mountain tank engines that were built in the 1950s. In 2018, we did 2 more specials about narrow gauge types. In 2019, I went out to Poland to film probably the last passenger running, revenue earning standard gauge steam locomotives in operation in Europe, if not the world, which were the PKP OL 49s. And that was a great experience. And so in 2022, I think to celebrate the 10th anniversary of steam locos in profile, what I would love to do is answer the calls of many of my fans on YouTube, because I get something like 33, 34% of my regular audience are from America. And they've been begging at me to go to America and review some of their locos for years and years. So I thought, answer their call. It will be a nice thing to sort of honor their appreciation for the show by reviewing locomotives from their side of the Atlantic.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was thinking of a way to segue to how does that translate to what you're trying to do. So the answer to the question is, I'm just going to make it easy for everybody. Chris is trying to raise the funds to bring that show here and feature a bunch of our US, North American steam locomotives in profile as steam locos in profile videos. And that's really the impetus behind our talking today. One of my viewers made me aware of what you were doing and your programs, which I hadn't heard of before. It's not a reflection on you. It's a reflection
That's
on
okay.
how busy I am. And I watched some of these videos from the UK and thought, wow, this guy's doing a really good job showing these things. And I thought it's a great idea to help you get over here and do some of those. Even one of the locomotives that you want to cover is one that I'm very familiar with, which is the Sierra number 3, which is I think it's a 10-wheeler out here in Jamestown. So basically, I want to have you talk about, which loco, because you have enough to do some of them already, right? So you're in like the pre-planning stages for some of these. Maybe talk a little bit about that, and we'll wrap up with how people can help you achieve this and come over here and get these programs done. So I think they'd be great programs.
It's very kind of you to say that you think they'll be great programs. I hope they'll be great programs too. But yeah, you're right in saying that we've got enough funding already to make some of the programs, but not all of them. So I launched this crowdfunding campaign in July 2021 to cover up to 9 types of steam locomotive in the US for between £5,000 and £30,000, depending on how many locomotives we get round to. So starting from the bottom tier, for £5,000, we'd be able to review the Jones and Laughlin Steelworks 040 switchers, the 2-foot gauge or 23-inch gauge, I should say, saddle tanks that used to work at the J&L Steelworks in Ohio. For £10,000, which we have just passed, so we've got enough to make these as well, we'll be able to review the Mount Washington Cog steam fleet and the Forneys of the main narrow gauge. For £15,000, we'll be able to get round to all of these, as well as the D&RG Mikados and all of the classic American standard 440s, the ones that you see in all the old Wild West movies and so on. For £20,000, we'll be able to throw in the Shays, various types of Shay on top of that. Then for £30,000, we think we'll be able to really push the boat out by reviewing all of these, plus the big boys, the Berkshires, and produce a special on Sierra Railway number 3. Now, the deadline for this crowdfunding campaign is the end of March 2022, so 31st of March 2022. And by that time, if we get all that money in place by then we'll be able to commence filming pretty much straight after the deadline, and then hopefully get all the films finished by the end of 2022. Now, a lot of people have asked me, why would you cover these particular locos? Now, I did look into covering other types as well. Like, people have been asking me about the Reading Railroad T1s and 611 and 844 and the Challenger and all the rest of it. Now, I did look into some more of these, but I chose the Locos on this on the list for a combination of reasons. Firstly, just general interest, because it's you got quite a wide spectrum between some obscure 23-inch gauge shunting engines and the big boys and the movie queen. Also because they represent a sort of quite a broad range of American railroad history. You know, you're going all the way back to 1834 with the classic American 440s, because that's when the design was patented, right up to the development of the Berkshires in the 1950s and so on. Also because of practicality, because, you know, as much as I would love to get out and review stuff like the T1s and the Daylight and 611 and so on, some of them are perhaps a little bit too impractical to cover, because one of the things about steam locos in profile episodes is they usually take years to produce, just because it takes that long to get all the rushes together from each film. You know, with every railroad operating on every single weekday or weekend in some cases, you can only be in so many places at once. And because I'm usually working as a one-man band, okay, I do have two other camera operators who help out from time to time, and they work on the payroll. They both have full-time jobs, so they can only do so much themselves. So a lot of the time it's me doing all the filming. So while I would love to do stuff which is more sort of a one-off in preservation, there is only so much I can do at once. So you know, making a film about the DNRG Mikados would be a lot easier than making something about 611, because there's only one of 611, but there's several Mikados in close proximity to each other, within a few hours' drive of both Colorado railroads, and even they've got an interesting story to tell. So yeah, there's just a wide spectrum of reasons why I chose the locomotives I chose. Okay, I can appreciate that they're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but unfortunately, you're not going to be able to please everyone. But then who knows? If we get above £30,000, then I might be able to look into more.
Sure. And while you're out at the Cumbres and Toltec in Durango and Silverton, you might consider their consolidations as well, because they have a couple of those running around too.
I'd love to squeeze those in if I can.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd love to squeeze other sorts of locos in if I can. And
maybe
you know,
double it up.
I wouldn't like to rule anything out, but like I say, there is only so much you can do at once without sort of exhausting yourself.
Yeah. I want to ask you a question that's really for the viewers. Believe me when I say I know, because I've been making videos similar to what you do for many years now. But give people an idea. You know, someone watching might be like, wow, why does he need so much money? Like, why would, because people think you can just go out in a day with your phone or your little consumer camera and have enough video and enough good video to make a good video for YouTube. If they think that, they obviously haven't seen your programs. But tell them what it takes. You know, what's your process? Because you have to contact, well, you tell them.
Well, it's not just a case of going down your local railway, filming whatever's moving around and then hoping it all fits together in the edit. You know, you've really got to plan ahead on multiple weekends. You know, I take my work literally all over the country. So, you know, I've got fuel to consider. Out in the States, I'm going to have to hire cars. I'm going to have to get hotels and so on. You know, I've got to feed myself for several months. So and this is all after getting myself out there, you know, with the flights being as expensive as they are. So when you're covering such great distances for such a projected length of time, you know, I could be out there for 6 months if we get to £30,000 and making all 9 films. It will all stack up eventually, you know. So even just making one film is going to be expensive enough, just in the cost of the flights and the accommodation alone. But never mind having to hire several cars while you're out there,
even
and
the media,
pay for the fuel and so on.
Yeah, even the blank media that you'll have to use, and the archival, the storage of all the media that you take is going to cost a lot, because you got to buy hard drives and I mean, those are all one-off costs which can last for several years, but even then, you've still got to invest in them to begin with. Yeah, I just find it interesting. It's nice to talk to someone that is doing the same kind of stuff, because you can kind of commiserate with how difficult it can be and how expensive and time consuming. I mean, that's the real process for me. Yes, there's a lot in pre-production, and I find it interesting that people give me funny looks when I tell them Yeah, well, when I film something, that's the shortest time, is just capturing the footage, just the absolute shortest time. That's maybe 5 or 10% of the time that it's going to take to put something out in its finished form, because you probably have about 60%, or depending on the project, or more in pre-production, or maybe you have 80% in post-production because of all the editing that you have to do, because there's so much. And I think, I don't know, I get a kick out of it because people think that just because you have a phone you can make videos on YouTube, and you can, but they look like they were videos made on YouTube with a phone. So
I remember I was talking to, this is going slightly off topic, in one of my other shows called Gauge the Issue, where I review railway related media and talk about railway related issues. I was interviewing a former BBC producer who made a bunch of documentaries about a disused railway for the BBC back in the 1980s. And he was telling me that all of his stuff was shot on film, as it would have been in those days. And a roll of film in those days cost about £100 for 100 foot of film, and 100 feet would get you 10 minutes of film. And so when you're working on a television budget, as you would have been in working for the BBC, because they don't spend anything on their programs, especially nowadays, you really have got to be careful about how much you shoot. And the ratio that they could afford was about 4-1. So, 40% would end up on the cutting room floor, and then 10% would go in. It just gives you an idea of just how careful you got to be with what you're shooting.
Yeah, we're lucky we don't have that as bad nowadays, considering like you don't even have to develop anything, right? It's just a matter of, at least for me, it's a matter of taking your card and putting it in the computer, and then if you're really being conscientious about space, you might go through and cut out the junk. I accidentally hit record for 10 seconds and there's that clip, get rid of it, because there's no, you never have any use for something like that. But yeah, it is interesting juxtaposition of times, I think, considering the other things we have to worry about now. It's a lot easier probably for us nowadays, but still is a lot more complex and more complicated than I think a lot of viewers who enjoy the videos can really contemplate. So it's interesting. I do want to ask you, because I really want to help you get over here. And if you end up out here in Jamestown, I may even come over there and meet you and take some videos of my own, just to hang out, But,
well, here's hoping. It'll be good to get together if we do manage to get to Jamestown.
Yeah, for sure. Also, I think it's easy sometimes to take yourself too seriously, and I've really made it a point not to take myself too seriously and keep things fun. Because if you're not having fun, there's no point to doing what you're doing, as far as I'm concerned. So I do want to ask you though, and I'm sure people are wondering, especially after they go to see your videos of Steam Locos in profile, they're going to want to help. So how do they do that? How do they find your crowdfunding site to chip in and get you over here to make these videos?
Well, the web address for the crowdfunding site is www.e-gmedia.co.uk/slips in the USA. It's all lowercase, and that last bit's all one word. If you do wish to contribute, you can just donate money if you wish, but if you would like something in return for your contribution, then there's various perks up for grabs. So there's anything from certificates and posters just saying thank you for your contribution, right up to copies of the film, either as digital downloads or as DVDs or Blu-rays. There's exclusive mugs, t-shirts, there's calendars. There should be a crew diary, hopefully coming out at the back end of 2022, early 2023. So it just gives something. It's nice to give something back to people for their contributions, as well as the knowing that the understanding that the films are being made.
I'm in the same boat. We have shirts and mugs and stuff that we offer to people when they support us on Patreon. So I understand where you're coming from. I want to thank you, Chris. And just for the viewers, I will put the link in the description of the video where you are watching this on my channel, so that you don't have to remember all of what he just said with the slashes and dashes and all the fun URL. The URLs are always fun, aren't they? You never know what you're going to get, but it's always something you can never remember if you wanted to. So look in the description below for a link And thank you very much, Chris. It's a pleasure to finally get to talk to you. And I'm really hoping that you'll make it out to my area so that we can hook up and maybe chase some trains together or something. It could be a lot of fun.
That would be, yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you very much for having me, John. I
You're
feel
very
privileged to
welcome.
be here. So thank you.
All right. And now, thanks everybody for watching. And we'll get back to either our regularly scheduled program or whatever the end of this interview right now.